So again, the whole, like, all of our coaching staff has known each other from the beginning of time. Yep, there you go. Introduce yourselves and where you're going to school or whatever.
Good evening, we are Reno High School's Unit 5. My name is Carla Bertram, and I will be attending Western Washington University.
My name is Ashley Dreer, and I will be attending University of Nevada, Reno.
My name is Jacob Hoberg, and I will also probably be attending Duke University.
My name is Kat Lynch, and I will be attending Chapman University.
My name is Gigi Atem, and I will be attending Santa Clara University, and our unit coach is Mr. Scott Daniel, and our teacher is Mr. Richard Clark.
A political scientist contends that that understanding the American experience of religious liberty and the meaning attached to it today must start with history. Do you agree? Why or why not? What evidence can you offer to support your response? How would you differentiate between the competing principles of accommodation and strict separation? Why are they in tension? In a free government, the security of civil rights must be the same as for religious rights. In one case, it consists of a multiplicity of interests, in the other, a multiplicity of sects. Is this admonition of particular importance today? What might endanger the civil or religious rights of some Americans? You may begin.
With a death toll of upwards of 11 million, the 30-Year War, and Emperor Ferdinand II's attempt to curtail the religious activities of his subjects demonstrates the truly detrimental effect of religious oppression. This event, and the religious turmoil it caused, speaks to the question before us today, illuminating what might have gone through Thomas Jefferson's mind when he wrote of a wall of separation in 1803. The unique American experience of religious freedom has a complicated past that helps us explain the importance of the enshrinement of this liberty in the First Amendment, as well as the tenuous balance created in order to protect it.
Former Senator Robert Kennedy observed in The Pursuit of Justice that, ultimately, America's answer to the intolerant man is diversity, the very diversity which our heritage of religious freedom has inspired. We agree with John Ragosta's assertion that understanding American history is of vital importance to understand the complex American experience with religious liberty. Colonists moved to the United States to evade religious persecution, but religious freedom in the colonies was not absolute.
Through events such as the Great Awakening, Protestant Christianity became the rule in the colonies rather than the exception. Many colonies had an established religion to which they gave preference, while excluding others. Maryland originally served as a refuge for Catholics who were excluded by Puritan colonies, yet it actively banned Jewish peoples. However, acts such as the passage of the Virginia Act for establishing religious freedom in 1786 prompted the separation of the church and state and influenced the framers to keep the Constitution religiously neutral.
In the 20th century, the incorporation of the Free Exercise Clause in Cantwell v. Connecticut in 1940, the expansion of free exercise to include Buddhism in Cruz v. Beto in 1970 made religious freedom a fundamental right and continued the expansion of religious freedom beyond its Christian roots. Though it started from a place of insincerity, religious freedom has steadily progressed to more fully encompass the original ideas of the framers.
The vague nature of the Establishment Clause has forced courts to find ways to interpret laws that is true to the founders' intent. In the Everson v. Board of Education, Justice Hugo Black wrote, "The First Amendment has erected a wall between church and state. That wall must be kept high and impregnable." Justice Black promoted the idea of strict separation, one where the government has no involvement in religious institutions.
The defense of strict separation is the basic idea President James Madison outlined after his presidency, that the practical distinction between religion and civil government is essential to the purity of both. However, some argue that the government may still be a part of these institutions and provide the means for an individual to practice their religion, an idea known as accommodation.
The University of Michigan at Dearborn encountered this conflict when their Muslim population did not have an adequate place to wash their feet before prayer. In consequence, the university used this principle of accommodation to install $25,000 foot washing stations in multiple bathrooms on campus. By allowing this at a state school, the government was involved in the process of conforming to an individual religion's needs, something strict separation advises against.
When introducing the Bill of Rights, James Madison stated, "The civil rights of none shall be abridged on account of religious belief or worship." Civil and religious rights each encompass a myriad of beliefs and experiences that require rigorous protections. Certain civil rights are protected through the protections of religious rights, as seen in Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which prohibits employment discrimination based on race, color, religion, sex, or national origin.
This recognition of the importance of religious freedom becomes becomes important in cases such as Equal Employment Opportunity Commission v. Abercrombie and Fitch in 2008, which required employers to accommodate their employees' religious practices, a decision that protects both civil and religious liberties.
These liberties face additional challenges due to increased radicalization. Vitriolic rhetoric, like that promoted by presidential candidate Donald Trump, blinds public to the American legacy of promoting religious diversity and the necessity of its protection. As exemplified when Ronald Reagan observed, the most essential element of our defense of freedom is our insistence on speaking out for the cause of religious liberty. Thank you.
421.
I would say just really quickly, you can cut down by, instead of going Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, EEOC. Your judges will know what that is. Yeah.
So you mentioned Donald Trump. Does his policy of saying that he wants to exclude all Muslims at the border, does that violate the Establishment Clause by prohibiting people that are not citizens of this country from coming in?
Some could make the argument that it doesn't necessarily conflict with the Establishment Clause because it isn't necessarily advancing one religion over the other. What it is doing, some people might argue, is advancing a compelling state interest. And really, because of the increase in terror attacks that we've had within the United States and abroad, as seen in Paris and as seen here in San Bernardino, that protecting its people and their actual persons against that kind of violence could be considered compelling state interest that would warrant a kind of exclusion.
While there may be the idea that it does have this compelling state interest, it could violate the second prong of the lemon test in the way that it does inhibit a religion. I mean, it doesn't allow them in the United States, so it is particularly setting them away from everyone else and not allowing that religion to be as open as all the others.
However, I would argue that it doesn't necessarily violate the Establishment Clause, but rather the Free Exercise Clause. Within the United States, we're all guaranteed the right to freely exercise our religion, and by excluding Muslims from the United States, this inherently makes them not free to exercise this religion within the United States, which is what many of the colonies did when we were originally forming, like Maryland isolating the Jews or other colonies isolating the Catholics.
So what exactly is the difference between the two clauses? The Establishment Clause and the Free Exercise Clause?
The best way to think of it is that the Establishment Clause applies to the government, that they can't establish a national religion. And then the Free Exercise Clause is more of an individual right to the people. Everyone singly, individually has the right to practice their own religion under this government.
Essentially, the Establishment Clause is more of a negative right. It's a right against government intrusion, whereas the Free Exercise Clause is more of a positive right. It's something the government is giving us the ability to do.
Government gives you the ability to exercise religion?
Well, not necessarily. They're affirming that the government themselves can't intrude upon it, but it's more of a positive thing than specifically inhibiting government action.
I'm gonna let you guys ask most of the questions.
So, by your definition, this actually violates the Free Exercise Clause. How is that possible if the person involved isn't actually within the country?
What we've seen time and time again is that the rights within the Bill of Rights don't just apply to the citizens of the United States, but rather apply to peoples all across the world. We can see this most evidently in cases like Alota v. Bush and Lumine v. Bush, where they actually said that even though some of these people that were suspected terrorists were still guaranteed the right to habeas corpus. Therefore, they weren't actual citizens of the United States, however, they still had rights under our Constitution. By this same respect, Muslims trying to immigrate into the United States would be protected to freely exercise their religion here, and therefore that would protect them under the Free Exercise Clause.
Do people outside the United States who are not citizens, and do they have a right to, a general right to enter the United States, period?
No, they wouldn't necessarily have a right to enter the United States. We have a very arduous immigration process here, and not only is it kind of hard to get into the country legally, it's hard to stay here for very long legally with all of the green cards and the visa processes. They're very strict in all of the things that they have set up, and you would have to leave the country. My older sister, her college boyfriend was here on a education visa from Australia, and the second that was up, he had to go back to Australia. He couldn't stay here for even like a week longer than his visa was up. So it definitely is. They don't necessarily have that as a right to come into the country.
However, I think that if we look at what America was founded, the values that we were founded upon, we see that this should be a right for all people because America has this American dream. It's the land of opportunity. We can even look to the inscription upon the Statue of Liberty, which says, like, bring me your weak and your poor, and I think that that is a testament to the fact that America is a safe haven for peoples all across the world who are facing religious persecution. Again, looking at history, that's the entire reason that America was ultimately born, because we wanted this religious freedom.
Okay, I want to ask, we kind of center on something different. About 6 years ago, an Islamic, kind of like the equivalent of Islamic YMCA, attempted to lease property about 2 blocks away from the World Trade Center. It was an old Burlington coat factory as an Islamic YMCA. It very quickly became a controversy over the quote-unquote ground zero mosque. It was not a mosque, it was a Burlington coat factory that was going to be basically a Muslim YMCA. But a lot of people said it's just too soon, it's too insensitive to have a quote-unquote mosque this close to ground zero. Do you agree that that in certain cases that you should be that these Muslims should be more quote-unquote sensitive to the victims of 9/11?
I would definitely disagree. I think that not only were there actually Muslim victims that were people that were victim of 9/11, like there were Muslim people that were in the World Trade Center when the planes crashed into it, but also a group of people should be held accountable for the actions of extremists within their own community. The people that committed the acts, like the horrible acts on the World Trade Centers, were not exemplary of the Muslim faith as a whole, and so you shouldn't essentially punish a group of Muslims that are trying to exercise something that's utterly peaceful and not inhibiting or hurting that site in any way from doing what they want to do.
Exactly, they still have the religious freedom to exercise their religion, even if it is after something really bad happened. So I think that I disagree, and I think that they should be allowed to still exercise their religion.
Yeah, I don't think you need to be sensitive to the aspects of these people that were offended and think that it's generalized by the religion. Like Carl was saying, Jessica Stearns, an international affairs professor at Harvard University, actually talks about how racism increases after some of these large terrorist attacks. They saw it after San Bernardino. They also saw it in a huge wave after 9/11. So we actually see an increase in racism, whereas toleration of these races, allowing them to build a mosque and seeing that they truly are peaceful and it's not the entire
Is Islam a
religion.
race?
Excuse me, I meant true.
Going back to your question, is it would be a violation of the free exercise clause if we deported these Muslims in the United States, not just by not letting them into the United States, because we would be deporting them because of their religion, which is going against the free exercise clause that we have in the United States.
All right.